Hello, everyone. Again, here through the magic of video and pre-recording, I'm so thrilled that we can have this opportunity in the second cycle of our summer series to invite some more voices from the congregation to join us in thinking about our faith journeys all together, and particularly faith journeys as a family, and the role of gratitude, the role of living thankful lives, and how that sees all of us through, but particularly the role that has played for the Burton family, who are a very beloved part of our Trinity United Church Beamsville family. They have various last names as the generations unfold, but they all seem to fall under that wonderful umbrella of the Burtons. So here I have with me today just three of the wonderful big family that they are. Some of those details will come out as we chat through this little time together, and I will let them introduce themselves as we go along, but this is my opportunity to say more formally in front of the three of them how grateful I am that they said yes, and there was only a little bit of arm twisting to make this happen, and yes, I am looking at Dorothy about that. She promises she will be good or the best she can through this time, but it's going to be wonderful as always. Donna and I will try to keep these two sisters as they should be. And I also just wanted to say that when we were planning this time, we had most certainly looked forward to having Pauline and Dorothy's brother, Donna's uncle, John, join us as well. But John is at home right now. He's had to decline joining us for now as he's home recovering, and you've heard me talk about that perhaps last Sunday in our prayer time, and we will again today. But John is at home, and he is recovering well and strong, and we decided that he's at home cheering us on. And so we just, John, we love you and miss you, and can't wait till we can do this all together properly back together at church. So I'm going to stop talking, shift off to the side, and we will start just having a family conversation together with this segment of the Burtons. So why don't we start by just having you introduce yourselves to each other, or to the world, I suppose, by saying who you are kind of in relation to the Burton family as you might describe it to the rest of the world. And then as we go along, maybe we'll talk about, or one of you can share where you fall within that grand order of siblings of the Burtons. So Donna, why don't we start with you?
Starting with okay, well, I'm Donna Burton. I'm the second generation of Burtons represented here. I am the niece of Pauline and Dorothy, who are also here. My dad was Horace, their eldest brother. Some of you may remember him from church here. And I guess that's that's it for now. I'll turn it over to my aunts.
And I am Dorothy Burton Birch. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm fourth from the top and sixth from the bottom. And we've been here since 1939.
And we'll come back to that when you say here, but you mean Trinity when you say that. Yes, okay. Yes. All right. Okay. Fourth from the top, sixth from the bottom.
Right.
Got it. Okay. Pauline?
I'm Pauline Cosby, and I'm the third eldest in the family. I'm the first girl. And I've been coming to church here as long as the rest of the family has.
Mm-hmm. Can one of you give us that rundown of the siblings? Because nobody has said yet how many there were, unless they have peeked at the title of the book between us, but.
Do you want to do that? Go ahead.
Well, there's 10 of us, and I'll give you the names, and I like to say both names if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Horace William, Raymond Edward, Evelyn Pauline,
That's you.
that's me, Dorothy Elizabeth,
That's her.
Douglas Allen, Russell Milton, Mary Almeida, Ronald Arthur, John Gordon, Emily Joyce.
Wow. Well done. Well done. And I'm sure there's other stories in there about times that you have been called by your full names and not just Dorothy, but when Dorothy Elizabeth, but anyway, that may be a whole other interview in and of itself. Now, can you tell us, so we've got the 10 children and your parents are still in your memory and heart?
Edward Horace was dad,
Yes.
and mother was Blanche Elizabeth. Gracie Burton. She was Gracie,
Okay.
okay?
From,
Dad came from a large
from
family.
Irish ancestry.
Yeah.
Maybe I could mention that your dad, Eddie, as I call him, Grandpa Eddie.
Yeah.
I'd never met him, but he came over at the age of 11 in 1883. He was sent to Canada as a British home child. And so, he was sent to a farm in Sheffield, which is between Galt and Rockton, sort of northwest of Hamilton, I guess, and stayed there, and then came to Beamsville around 1900 and settled here, and ultimately set up a butcher business on the main street of town here.
And then built his family. Yeah. And I'm sure it will come up sprinkled throughout the conversation as well, but it's that rich and big family history that you have that has, in the last year, publication has come within the last year, but that is a large part of what we find encapsulated in the book that sits between Pauline and Dorothy, the family history called And Then There Were 10. But anyway, we'll come back around to that maybe along the way. What I'm wondering is, so I guess what I should have said in the intro too was, just for full disclosure, that you've had the questions in advance, so there's no shock here of what I'm going to ask you, but you answer them however. I don't know what you're going to say, but the second thing that I asked you was, I said, for people like me, I only have one sibling, one older sibling, and so I have both a curiosity and an amazement that there was a house with 10 children and how that all got managed. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what that was like, and are there distinct memories that stand out about sharing a house with that many brothers and sisters?
Oh, yes, our memories are very much alive. Take us way back. Yes, always slept 3 in a bed sometimes, didn't we?
Yep. We had to.
There always seemed to be enough to eat. It was pretty hard during the Depression years.
We had chores to do. We had chores to do.
Oh, there was chores to do. Yes. Well,
And get into trouble.
we lived first on West Avenue in Beamsville. Then in 1928, Dad decided that he wanted to get rid of the butcher business and he wanted a farm. So we moved to Camden, and we had a 100-acre farm. No houses around, so we just made our own fun and didn't have to worry about making a lot of noise to disturb the neighbors. We had a very special family, though, that lived up the road, and their daughter became a very close friend of my mother's, and she helped her out with with the household duties. She was always a friend of the family. And then my dad got sick, and we sold the farm, and we moved into Camden proper. Then we were around a lot of people. That was quite a change for us. And we lived there for 5 or 6 years, 5 years maybe, something like that. And then my father passed away. He had Hodgkin's disease. He passed away, so my mother had the 10 of us to look after all by herself. And because I was starting high school, my 2 older brothers, they used to ride their bicycles from Camden to high school every day.
So that was Horace and...
Horace and Raymond. But Mother said I couldn't ride the bicycle. I would never be able to handle that. So she had to get someplace closer to the high school. So she found this place on Lincoln Avenue. It was a farm, but we didn't own the farm. We rented the house for $8 a month. And we were supposed to help take the fruit off. And so we were fairly close to town, really. But we had to walk everywhere, didn't we, Dorothy? Dorothy had to walk to work.
I had to walk to school
And they had to walk to school.
and cart my 2 brothers behind me by their ears sometimes. They didn't want to go.
Dorothy was in charge of all the younger ones that went to the lower 30 school.
I imagine that was
quite a problem sometimes, I guess. And Donna can tell you a little bit about Horace's job, that he was the eldest, and we'd only been in Beansville on Lincoln Avenue for a couple of years.
Well, yeah, I mean, my dad was being the eldest, and he was only 16, almost 17 when their dad died. So, and of course, the youngest of their siblings was only a few months old. So my dad actually went and kind of left the household and got a job with a man in town who had a plumbing business named Hubert Cornelius, and actually went and boarded at his house and apprenticed with him as a plumber, and worked as a plumber with him till the mid-60s when he went off to General Motors. But and I'm assuming, and we kind of assume, that some of what he earned went back to help his mother support the family.
Right.
Now-
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Now, the income that Mother acquired was in 1939, I think it was, the government decided that they were going to implement a mother's allowance. And the mother received $10 a month, and the government paid $5 a month for each child. So she had a check each month for $60 to pay rent, to buy groceries, pay the hydro, whatever else it was.
Yeah, and every month the lady came around and checked on Mom to see how much she was spending of that money and where the money was going, so that she wasn't overdoing it and spending on something frivolous. It was just for what they said it was for. You couldn't have a car, you couldn't have a telephone, you couldn't have a radio, nothing electric. you know. It was just, that was the way it was.
So all of those details are baffling for my head, for my generation and younger to get our heads around just the financial component. But then I'm also thinking about, are there significant memories of what it was like for your mother, for all of you to cope? Because I've said to you a number of times that I was hardly in the door here at Trinity, and I was being told in snippets about the Burton family story, because it carries such a powerful weight for people, I think for lots of reasons. But just to think about what that was like for all of you, and the tragedy of your dad dying, and then the scope of the family, and how your mother, by all accounts that I've heard, not just survived, but you thrived. So do you have a couple of memories about how that coping happened, not just the financials, but like, how did you do that?
We all had chores to do, and and you had to do them. Like, we had to take the cows out to the pasture in the morning, and one cow was on a long chain, boy, I tell you, and I was on the other end of it. I never got too darn close to that cow, I'll tell you, but that was when we were on the farm. And like, we had no hydro, no running water. We had cisterns, and an outside privy, so no hydro, no telephone. So and I don't know how Mother ever got a doctor to the house when she needed one without a telephone, So whether Dad went to Montgomery's, who had a phone, and called the doctor to make sure that he was there on time when this child was to be born, I don't know. But anyway.
So it wasn't easy.
No.
And then certainly would have been magnified after your dad died. I mean, did your dad talk about that time as the eldest, in terms of that, sort of all the children behind him and his mom? And
not a lot to me, but I mean, I've heard, to be honest, I've heard a lot more stories about the family through the writing of the book that my cousins Beth and James, Raymond's daughter Beth and her husband James, wrote, and just hearing them from Aunt Pauline and Aunt Dorothy. I just heard a couple of stories just now about things. But I think he talked a lot to his brothers. The brothers particularly were very close, and certainly the ones living in town. Horace, Raymond, Doug, and John were always doing things together as, all through their lives, and community care and the Lions and just doing projects. So I think they shared a lot of stories amongst them.
Themselves,
What was the role of the church in your family life? So early on, Dorothy, you said you've been here since 1939. So
right.
I know some of the answer to that, but I'd love to hear you all talk about the place of faith in your coping.
Can I say a little bit about me?
Of course you can.
She had her turn, I want my turn. I was born with a congenital dislocation of the left hip, and I was in a cast for 11 months on a stretcher. Wow. At the time when my mother was pregnant with Doug. So when I got off the stretcher, I had to learn to walk all over. And at that point, Doug was just learning to walk, so we learned to walk together. We did everything together. Dad was very strict. We had to go to Sunday school every Sunday, church. Horace, Raymond, Pauling, and I were all baptized in the Methodist church over here on Queen Street. And we had scarlet fever twice, 2 different times. And Doug and I, we were the ones that didn't get it, so we were the ones that had to do the cooking for a few days. And then Mother said, I think I better get Aunt Annie down here and help, because I'm afraid you guys are going to burn the house down. So some things, funny things, happen.
You
So,
had some adventures.
Yeah. But when we come to, before we came to Trinity, Pauline and I, we went around to different churches. I don't know whether the boys were with us or not when we did that. When we went to other churches to see what they were like, the Presbyterians.
This is when
and
your
the-
mom had moved you into town here.
in town, yeah.
Yeah.
No, in 1939, when we
Couldn't
first
tell
moved to Lincoln Avenue.
Okay.
Okay, that was just after Dad died.
Yes, yeah, yeah,
And we
yeah.
moved in the fall, we came here, and then we checked out the different churches, and this church was the only one that didn't have, Sunday school in the afternoon, and your dad didn't like that, so we said, okay, it's going to be Trinity. So that's how we ended up here, and we are still here, some of us, anyway. And we'll be back soon, I hope. Yeah.
And we're very glad about that.
Yes.
Both that you're here, but also that we'll be back together again soon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So church has always played an important role
Oh,
in your
yes.
life, and it was something that obviously stayed with you when you moved communities and
Oh, yeah.
part
From
of
the
your
time we
family
were very
coping.
small.
So,
So religion is always, yeah, when Sunday came, we went to church, no questions asked. We
No.
dressed up as best we could. We always had different clothes for Sunday. And, yes, and we went to church every Sunday.
so I'm thinking that that is in direct connection to what I'm about to ask you to talk about next, and that is a couple of things that I've said when we were preparing for this that I've always admired about your family. I think, again, there's that little bit of awe. One is you seem very close-knit for a family that is so large. That's a huge piece of respect as well. But I think that's tied into everything you've talked about already. But also, as a family, from this side of your lives, I see that you seem to function with a really powerful ability to always find a way to be thankful, to give thanks.
Oh,
It's not to say that you're Pollyanna. You know when things are hard, and you talk about, and I would say we talked about how this interview was originally going to happen last week, but there was that hard piece to deal with the news of John being in the hospital. And so, life has hard realities, but you always seem to cope with them with an ability to still say thank you. And I'm wondering if you can talk about how that was instilled, and also from the sort of the second generation perspective, what that was like to, be raised by this large, very thankful family in spite of really hard things that happened. Did your dad talk about that?
Well, for my generation, yeah, and I think pretty much all of us feel very lucky to have been part of this family, and we have seen a lot of really great models in our aunts and uncles. Some interesting models too, but generally we'll go with the community service model. And I think that part of being thankful for what you have is perhaps carrying that out to give back in some way. And I was thinking it's quite interesting that the number of us, there were only, of the 10 of them, well then there's only 16 original grandchildren, and a number of us are only children. But it's interesting that a number of us have had jobs in sort of customer service or teaching or helping kinds of professions, as well as both this generation and a number in my generation are into community service as well, or helping in various ways in their churches, or probably coaching teams or something. So that's carried through to my generation quite a bit. And I think it's, as my dad originally expressed it, something about it was, it seemed that some of it goes back to how this family felt they were really helped when their dad died, and here's Grandma Burton left with this very young family. People dropped off food to their door. They probably forgave bills at various stores. They just did a number of things to help them out when the family really needed it. And in his view, that seemed to be kind of the roots of this family now carrying on and
So your mother sounds like she was very wise and persuasive.
Oh, she was.
Is that a good word?
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the spirit of being wise and gently persuasive, do you have wisdom that you'd like to offer to your Trinity family, both, I mean, about this present time that we've been living in and through, but also in the sense of coping with life as a whole for the grand and sometimes difficult but beautiful gift that it is?
But going through COVID-19, I found that it wasn't hard for me. I know it was hard for a lot of people, but I didn't feel, how am I going to say this, that it was headed at me it was indirectly. It wasn't my fault that it was there, so just cope with it each day as it comes. Let tomorrow take care of itself, and it will.
Mother never said anything about if there was a situation came up that took extra money. She never said, well, I don't know how I'm going to find the money to do that. Never, ever did she say that.
Because she knew how to handle it, that's why.
Yeah.
No.
And she went on after she got settled and had a little bit more money. Then Joyce was in Bermuda working, and so Mother and neighbor across the road, Mrs. Stamp, they went to Bermuda for a week, and she thoroughly enjoyed that trip, and I don't know how she did it. I really don't.
But that is one thing I've always found about the family. I've worked with people, or we've all encountered people who maybe come into a tough situation and say, can't do that, no, won't work, can't do it. What I've always found about this family, including my dad, and I'll think of Uncle John right now when I say this. How do I do that?
Yeah.
They're presented with, it's this determination where you're presented with a problem, but that doesn't mean you can't overcome the problem. It's just,
It's such a
what's
very
the
different way of
around
looking
it?
at,
yeah. And that's what I've always noticed about this family, and just like you said, with Grandma saying, well, gee, I have a chance to go to Europe, or I have a chance to go to Bermuda. I maybe don't, not sure how I'm going to work it yet, but it's an opportunity, and I'm going to see how I can do it.
It just makes me think how, for the power of a family that has lived through what a lot of the rest of us looking in, the scenarios, we would look and say, that just feels impossible. A single mother raising 10 children and in very difficult social circumstances without supports and very little safety net, and yet it became possible. And I think that must have just shifted the whole family, or just strengthened an existing perspective and a faith. And that's why I'm so grateful. I mean, we could be here for hours and hours doing this, but I'm so grateful that you did say yes that you said no to bingo today, Dorothy. and you said yes to being here with us, and that John did say yes, and we certainly we miss him, and kind of keep the empty chair for him, because this is the kind of story that I need to hear, and I think our whole church family and beyond really need to hear. So I'm just really thankful that you said yes, that you continue to teach us, that there is always something to be thankful for. I thank you for your hymn suggestions, in case I don't say that in other parts of the service, that the hymns we're going to experience on August the 8th have come from this segment of the Burton family, and we're all really blessed and privileged to have you as part of the family since 1939 and counting. So, do you want to wave a goodbye to the camera?
Oh,
The camera here. Well, Tanya too. Tanya's on the camera. There we go.
Bye. See you in the movies.